Hello, Abel Abelson here, author of Setting Free the Intellectually Gifted and I, The Fly, see the links below, with a video on why you are unhappy. If you're unhappy and if you're somewhat neurodivergent, not neurotypical, chances are you are somewhat unhappy. There may be a lot of concrete reasons, a lot of specific situations and issues with people, with school, work, etc. But actually, below those, there are a few radical reasons, a few reasons more to the root of the question that actually are the main root causes of your unhappiness. And if you're aware of those root causes, and if you can do something about those, then all these specific concrete issues and situations will become a lot more clear, and you will be able to handle them in a completely different way, and a lot of them will actually resolve them all by themselves, just because you did something with the root causes. So what are these root causes that make you unhappy, especially if you're neurodivergent, not neurotypical? The first cause is that your model of the world is mistaken. So how does this work? The brain cannot process everything that's going on all the time. There's just too much detail, the resolution is too high, there's too much sounds, sights, too much perception, too much thoughts and stuff going on. It's too much. So it's impossible for the brain to actually process every little input in every situation all the time. So what happens? Two things actually. One thing is that the brain functions most of the time based on big patterns, on models. And that's what I mean with the model of the world. You have big models, you have categories, you have what's called prejudices, which are actually a kind of crunched data that's put in categories to have easy and quick reactions when stuff happens in the world, which is necessary for your survival. Now, there's nothing wrong with having these models. On the contrary, it's unavoidable. It's how the human brain works and has to work. If you wouldn't function with models, you'd go crazy in the space of a few seconds, probably, or minutes. However, these models are always abstractions, so there's a lot of details and data missing, which is normal. And they also can be quite mistaken, which is also normal, but which has as an effect that the world you live in, actually the mental world you produce based on the perceptions that you have and the processing of them, can be quite different from the real world there. If your model is greatly mistaken, things seem to be different than what they actually are, which has as an effect that your interaction with the world is quite off, it's quite mistaken, it's not in harmony with how the world is really functioning. And this is one of the huge root causes of unhappiness. As far as I'm concerned, it's what Buddhists refer to as being asleep or being awake, illumination. It's you are lucid about how the world really is, or you aren't lucid about how the world really is. And if you aren't, you'll be unhappy. It's unavoidable. Now, the neurodivergent part begins to play a big role when you start to think about projection. So this is the second aspect of this world model stuff. What's actually going on is that you are confronted with situations, especially with social situations and people, and you have to react very quickly and have a very quick idea of whether you're in danger or not, for instance. So what happens? You meet a person, and within the first second, your mind, your brain, your mind creates a model of this person. And based on this model, you will interact. And this model is partially made up of stuff you have lived before. All the people you've seen before that were more or less like that were dangerous. So this person looks like this, so this person is dangerous also, according to your quick model. And the second thing, and here comes the neurodivergent part, is that you will produce this model based on yourself. Actually, the blanks in the person you have before you, you meet a person and this person starts to talk with you. It's someone you've never seen or met before. This person starts to talk to you. You actually know next to nothing about this person. You have just some visual clues, maybe some unconscious clues about smells and pheromones and whatnot, and a few clues on content coming from what they say. It's next to nothing. Compared to the complexity of a person, it's next to nothing. But you have to make your model directly, because you have to interact and you have to know if you're in danger or not, etc. And the blanks in this person are filled up with previous experiences and also with projections of yourself. You will put yourself, your own neurology, your own way of acting and reacting, you will project it on all the parts of this person that are still blank. And these parts of this person that are blank now, lots of them will remain blank for a long time until you will actually, by trial and error and investigation and a lot of experiences with this person, start to really fill in all these gaps. So the net effect of this is that actually being neurodivergent, being not neurotypical, with a lot of people, you risk filling in the blanks with totally wrong data. So you will have people in front of you which your mind will project to be completely different than what they are. Your mind will project that they're quite like you unconsciously, and actually they may be a lot less like you than you would think. Now again, this is a natural process and not something you can avoid, but you can be aware of it. And being aware of it, you can add this little question mark all the time. So once you're aware of this, and being aware of it after me having said this to you, it's a start of awareness of this. But after this, you will have to practice this in your daily life, being constantly aware of the fact that you're creating models of the world. Actually, you never really are in touch with the world itself in a certain sense. I mean, all perception is processed and then changed into other stuff and into mental content. So whatever you see, whatever you feel, touch, smell, etc., is not actually really what is there. Apart from the fact, what I just said, it's processed, there's also a lot of frequencies and energies and stuff we don't even have sensory hardware for. So there's a lot going on around you of which you're totally unaware. So if you're more or less constantly aware of this fact, you can somehow leave the blanks a bit more like a blank, which is more correct. You can leave the parts of this other person that you're not really aware of, you can still put a question mark on there. I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And this is one major thing that can completely change your social life, and it's one major thing that can help remove this first root cause of unhappiness. So the second root of unhappiness, as I've analyzed and experienced it in my life, is comparable to the first one, but turned inwards, where actually your perception of yourself is mistaken, where you project characteristics in yourself that aren't there, where you think characteristics in yourself are missing that are there, and especially where you would like to be someone that you are not. Your model of yourself is mistaken. So there's the question of really learning to know yourself. But it's difficult to really learn to know yourself because we have these kinds of wishes towards ourselves, desires. We desire to be someone we are not in many aspects. And we tend to falsify our own perception of ourselves, both negatively and positively. So there again you have work to be done that is becoming lucid about yourself. Simply observing yourself. There's no one that can observe yourself as good as yourself. No therapist, no psychologist, nobody out there spends as much time with yourself as yourself, right? So in as much as you're completely, totally, radically honest with yourself, and you watch yourself, you observe yourself in a kind of detached way, just like a scientist that's observing a phenomenon and describing it for himself. If you can do this, you will learn very much about yourself, and this will eventually, but I say eventually, eliminate a lot of the second root cause of unhappiness, which is being unhappy with yourself, because your model of yourself is mistaken and because your desired model of yourself is far away from your natural and true characteristics. So you're trying to be too much something or someone you simply cannot and should not and don't have to be. That's the second root cause of unhappiness. In my personal experience, what helped me a lot with this was, in a certain sense, meditation. I wrote about this in my book also, Setting Free the Intellectually Gifted. But more than that, special contacts with special people, actually, which I wrote about also in my book. Again, the second root cause of unhappiness is more intense for neurodivergent people, because the majority of other people will desire things from us that are more normal for them, but are not really natural for us. We also may tend to put a lot more importance on what other people need from us because of empathy and stuff like that. So for neurodivergent people, again, this second root cause of unhappiness may be a lot more intense than it is for most other people. Then the third and last big cause of unhappiness, as I see it, is not having done your mourning process. Mourning referring to sadness and loss and grief. So what's going on here? It's related to the first and the second causes of unhappiness. Things are not as you would like them to be, in short. And this causes actually these 5 stages of mourning. And you always begin with the first stage of mourning, which is denial. So you'll have the tendency to deny that things are as they are. For instance, in ecological matters, you may tend to deny that things are going bad and are going worse every day, because it makes you unhappy to think about this, and we don't like to be unhappy, so we just look away from this thought. This is denial. If you succeed in surpassing your denial, you will get into the second stage, which is rage. You'll get really angry. For instance, in the ecological example, you'll get really, really angry with all these people that are making things worse every day. Now, if you've passed enough time with your own anger and you've accepted it and you've integrated it in yourself and you've given it its part of being right instead of trying to get rid of it, then we can come to the next stage, which is bargaining. If you've tried all the bargaining you can and obviously it doesn't work, then you can get into the fourth stage, which is sadness, depression. So first you denied everything as long as you could, but in the end you had to see the truth in the eye. Then you became angry because of this truth. Then you bargained, but the bargaining didn't really work. It may work a little, but it never really works with the really bad and important stuff. So now you're sad, you're depressed, you don't know what to do. There's nothing left to do. At that moment in your life, you feel like there's nothing left to do. It's all lost. Nothing has sense. So you're in your bed, you can't get out of it. That's the fourth stage. And then when you really embrace that stage also, and you just simply are depressed, and you let all these things, I see depression as a deconstruction of all your models, of all your faulty models, your mistaken models, and a reconstruction of new models. But you shouldn't hasten the reconstruction. Let it deconstruct all. You're in your bed and you say, this doesn't work, this isn't as I thought. A lot of things are not as you thought they were. And actually, if you notice, you're making big steps towards lucidity, towards illumination, towards seeing things really as they are. So let this deconstruction happen. Then once the deconstruction is more or less complete, there's nothing left to deconstruct at that moment in your life, you can start, or it will itself start reconstructing, all by itself. You don't push it, you don't hasten it, you're not scared of deconstruction, you just let things happen. Your brain does it perfectly, it does its stuff, it reconstructs, and you will have new models. These new models will be a lot more realistic. They will never be 100% realistic. And you will probably have to pass through all these stages various times in your life. But so, you're in the reconstruction, and then you can come into the final phase, which is actually you're back on your feet with a new outlook on the world and ready to do stuff. This time better. Now what I see around me is most people I see are don't even get to the second stage. They are in denial, denial and more denial. This is the same reason for which you can almost not tell anything about ecological matters to anyone. They just don't want to hear it because they're in denial. Being in denial makes you a kind of like a drug addict. You're kind of not unhappy because you're simply looking away all the time from everything that is difficult for you to face, everything that is uncomfortable to you, that makes you sad or angry or stuff like that. So you take your drugs of denial and it seems like you're okay and you're not. This is how most people go through life. So if you really want to do something with this third major cause of unhappiness, which is not going through all the stages of the grief process with the world and with other people, etc., there's a lot of work to be done, but in my opinion, it's the most noble and rewarding work that you can do. And I think that if more people who are capable of doing this process would actually do it, I mean intelligent and sensitive people, etc., if they would really go through their grief processes, this world would really, really start to become something else entirely. Let me know what you think. Check out my links to my books. Leave your comments. Thank you enormously to all those fabulous people who like and share and comment and subscribe. You're just phenomenal. And see you next time. Bye.